Hey guys, welcome to CraterMania. I'm your host, the man they call Crater, and I'd like to welcome you back to How I Got Into Wrestling. This is a show where we learn about how wrestling fans from all over the world give their perspective of how they got into wrestling. And on today's show, we have a very special guest. This man is from my original neck of the woods in Floyd County, Kentucky. For the past few years, he has been powering his way through the independent wrestling scene, especially here in the state of Kentucky. And he's worked with several wrestling legends in the past, like the Rock and Roll Express, the Powers of Pain, ECW legend Shane Douglas, NWA legend Tommy Rich, and the list goes on and on. So now, entering the CraterMania arena, the human horror movie, Adam Newsome. What's going
What's
on,
what's
man?
up? You doing all right, Crater?
Pretty good, man. It's good to have you here. I'm really glad to have you on the show. Thank you again for doing this, taking time to do it. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me on, dude. I love to shoot the bull and with a great guy like you who loves horror, who loves wrestling.
Oh
You
yeah, man.
know, it's right there. It's a two-way street.
Um, so yeah, again, like I said, glad to have you here. And before we get into the main part of the show, for anyone watching that may not know, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, man.
Well, I've always been a professional wrestling fan and student since I've been able to jump on a trampoline. And I was jumping on a trampoline before I could walk. So let that sink in. So I got in, I originally in my 20s, I trained MMA and I loved UFC as a kid. I mean, early UFC. So I got into MMA. I wanted to do it. And in my 30s, I had a few fights. I was supposed to go on a reality show called Warrior Island. It fell through.
Mm,
Um, I was training to fight for the Gladiator heavyweight title with Eddie Trotter's company, and unfortunately, Eddie passed away that morning, so everything
mm.
got canceled. And I was turning 30, and I was like, man, I've tore both biceps, dislocated my shoulders numerous times, and I was like, maybe I'm not too old right now to really give professional wrestling a try because it was my first love, anyway. So little did I know I'd get hurt a lot more in the wrestling ring than I did in the cage and in the boxing ring. So I thought that would be safer, and it wasn't. But I ended up getting up with Ken Cantrell from BCW, and he
Uh,
basically got me my start, and went down, met him at Bull Creek, and he gave me the paperwork to apply for a license, and went and got a physical, and buddy, we's off and running.
all right, yeah. I mean, and I'm very familiar with Ken and Lisa. With the Bluegrass Championship Wrestling. I've been going to their show. I mean, I went to their shows all the time back in the day when I was living in Floyd County. They'd have the shows at the Martin Community Center, and they have them over in Paintsville, just all over. The Eastern Kentucky, and I loved going to their shows. Um, so like I guess we'll start off with, we'll talk a little bit later about your wrestling career, but let's start off as, with you as a wrestling fan. So, my first question, and this is, I think, the most important question as it applies to this show, how did you get into wrestling?
Well, my brothers and when I was a small kid, they were really big into the NWA. I was
Mhm.
probably 3, 4, 5, and I started watching the Road Warriors, the Horsemen, Dusty, and then I'd catch WWF on, but I wasn't a fan of WWF really.
Mm,
I like the realism, the really I sound like Saint Pierre, realism of the Crockett stuff, and
mhm.
so I kind of gravitated towards that. The first professional wrestler that I ever remember that I was gravitated towards and had to emulate and pretend to be was the Great Muta. And
Oh, yeah. I love Muda,
so my
man.
brothers and my cousins, they would, they were big Road Warrior fans, and they'd paint their faces up. So they would paint my face up just to get me on the trampoline to beat me up. So you can be the Great Muta, and I'd be like, all right, great. And then I'd get on there, and I was just, it was a squash match, but I got to blow food coloring out of my mouth, and I got to do the flips, and but that was the first one. Great Muta was like I was just that backflip off the top rope. I'd go to the couch, try to do it. That was the first one that I actually remember taking to.
So Muda was the first wrestler you think you became a fan of?
Yeah, because my dad wasn't really a wrestling fan. He was really into boxing, and but he was like enamored at what an athlete he was. So if I would go to the trampoline, I would look out my window. My dad would be watching me on the trampoline, and he'd do this, and that was a cue for me to do the flip. So it was just a little. I mean, it was just something I remember sticking out. It was like, 3, 4 years old. That's your favorite, and that's basically my first memory of who I took to at that point.
Hell yeah, man! I'm a huge fan of Muda too, and
Oh man,
I've
he's
I've talked
unbelievable.
yeah, and I've talked with several people about that in the past, like that because Sting is my favorite wrestler of all time, and but I've always really been drawn to all those guys that wore the makeup, whether it be the
Yes,
Road Warriors or Muda or Ultimate Warrior or whoever it may be. I've always been a huge fan of of wrestlers who use the paint. And you yourself, in some of your matches, you even wear paint in your matches. Is that does that kind of go back to that fandom for Muda that kind of inspired that?
it does. It does. It goes back because it's just with my character. And once I become the human horror movie, I started being able, like, I could mix things up a lot. I could wear a mask out to the ring, or I could paint my face up and have something like, I mean, I've had the zombie from the Evil Dead. I had my buddy Fright do that one for me, the blue makeup. Let's see here. I mean, he's painted like half my face blood, half an American flag. So there's different. I can look at, and I'll tell you one of my favorite ones that he ever did for me was the Insidious Demon. It's one of my
Oh, the red,
favorite ones.
the lipstick or the red face demon, whatever they call him.
Yes, yes, red face demon. It was maybe my first one. I believe I ever done with the face
Hmm.
paint, and it looked so good
I
that
think I have seen photos of that before in the past, and it looks sick, man.
I worked John Noble. That was the first time I got
Oh,
worked
okay.
John Noble, and I had that up, and I'd take. At the time, I just had some black wrist wraps, so I started trying to make it like little fingernails, like he had in
Mhm.
it and stuff. So it was just a little neat. But yeah, it goes back to that. A lot of it was, being inspired by the great movie.
That's super cool, man. I love that. Besides the Great Muda, when you were first getting into wrestling, as a fan, who were some other guys that really stood out to you that you were a fan of at that time?
So the first, after the Great Buddha pretty much grabbed my attention.
Mhm.
That was what got me into it. So once I become like a fanatic and a student, my probably anywhere from 8 years old to 13, in that frame, I become a huge Tully Blanchard fan. Like
Oh, hell
I
yeah.
dove deep. Like, man, I would go rent the Crockett tapes because you could only rent them. You could get
Right.
them, but I would never take them back. So those became my encyclopedias of wrestling. And I got to watching Tully Blanchard, and everybody was such a Ric Flair woo, this and that. I'm like, this dude's way better. Like, as getting people to hate him. Like, this guy was cocky. He wouldn't flare. He would Tully. I don't know what it was, man. He was slick on a microphone. He was tough, but he would cower. It made me fall in love with being a heel. Um, so Tully, that was my fault. I started falling in love with the art of being a heel at that point. It was right after Tully, probably when I was in sixth grade, I started getting into Rick Rude a lot. And when I started getting into Rick Rude, that's when I realized that I wanted to be a pro wrestler because it was
Mm.
everything about Rick Rude. Like, I dove into him. I was ordering tapes off Amazon back in the day, and just I become obsessed with his work and his facial mannerisms, his promo ability, backstage stories on how legitimately tough he was. I just become all in. And I always say in high school, when people want to be Ric Flair, I want to be Rick Rude. So that was kind of like, that was me stepping outside and being someone else.
And to me, Rude was one of the best heels of all time. Uh,
It's not, I mean, he's severely underrated. I mean,
yeah,
severe.
and right there when he was doing the NWO stuff in the '90s, he was getting ready to come back for a comeback in his career. But I think there was an injury that got caused from over in Japan that kind of put a stop to that, unfortunately. And then
Well,
you know,
I've been blessed enough to become friends with Rick's sister, his
mm,
son. I've had his son on my podcast. I think what had happened was the Lloyd's of London situation. He had got hurt over in Japan with
Right.
that bump he took out of the ring, and he cashed in. Well, a year and a half, 2 years later, the wrestling world booms like it's never boomed before. So he could still, he was confident enough he could still work,
Right.
but he had already cashed that sum of money out, and it was a hefty amount. So let me make sure I'm getting this right. So when he came back to WCW after the NWO, or excuse me, after the Montreal screw job, he
Hmm.
was under the assumption, like all the guys were telling him, Eric's got Ted Turner's bank account. You can get what you want pretty much. So he was kind of like, hey, I'll come back. I can still work. They'll pay my Lloyd's off and give me a contract. I don't think it went down that way, and it caused a lot of animosity. So at that point, a lot of people don't know it, but you're right. He was training for a comeback, and he had reached out to Jim Ross and some people in WWF or WWE, and I don't think the interest was showed, and I think he become depressed, man.
Hmm. It's just a sad tale too, because like you had that, and then not long after that, he passed away,
Yeah.
and but yeah, man, like you're completely right when you say that he's totally underrated. He should have been a bigger star than what he already was. To me, and I think a lot of people, including yourself, one of the best heels of all time, one of the best, probably one of the best workers of all
Oh
time.
yeah, yeah. The way he
Uh,
bumped on or sold an atomic drop, it's never been done since. Like you
and
go watch Rick Rude sell an atomic drop.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I loved his feud with Sting in the early '90s in WCW. The stuff he was doing with Warrior and WWF back in the late '80s. Just amazing. I mean, the whole Dangerous Alliance stuff in WCW. Everything about that was just that's that his work in WCW in the early '90s is what really made me
Yes,
become a
that was his
huge
best
fan of
work.
him. Yeah,
That
absolutely, I
was his
agree.
best work. That War Games was Sting Squadron and the Dangerous Alliance is probably
Hmm.
my second favorite War Games, and it's just behind the original with the Horsemen and the Superpowers.
Now,
That
is that the one where like is is Sid in that match and he gives a
no, that was you're talking about when he botched that power bomb on
oh, I'm
Pillman.
Brian I'm Pillman, yeah, where he
Yeah,
hits like the top of the cage. So okay, yeah.
yeah.
The Sting Squadron was Sting and Ricky Steamboat, Dustin Rhodes,
Nikita
uh
Koloff was it?
Nikita Koloff, yeah, and then versus the Dangerous Alliance, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. Like a lot of those kind of like all around that era of WCW, NWA, all those war games matches they were having around that time were
I
just
looked so
phenomenal.
forward to them as a kid too. I can even remember looking. Excuse me. I can even remember looking forward to the Dungeon of Doom and Hulk Hogan's team.
Yeah,
I mean, I was
well,
looking forward to that.
I have a lot of people that I talk to sometimes about WCW, and they'll like look back at the stuff with Dungeon of Doom and like, oh, that was such a
I
ridiculous.
loved it.
So I loved Dungeon of Doom, man. Like, and because it was just all, that was the horror fan in
It
me
was crazy.
because
Yes, it was all these different types of monster characters, and I just, I loved Kamala as a kid. When he came back,
mhm,
that was awesome. Brutus Beefcake as the Zodiac. You had Mean, and then Shark. So basically, if you're a little bit older, me and you were younger at the time, but if you're a little
mhm.
bit older, you kind of see a pattern that Hogan's buddies that he feels comfortable working with are all coming in and joining
That's
him.
very true. I didn't think of it like that, but that's very true, man. So around this time, we talked about wrestlers that really appealed to you at that time. Was there what memorable matches or moments around that time stick out to you the most?
Uh, I'll tell you a cool moment was like I said, my dad he wasn't really into wrestling at all, hardly.
Hmm.
But he took me to Smoky Mountain Wrestling up
Hmm.
here at Pikeville, the old Pikeville College, and I was probably second, third grade, I guess. But still to this day, and I've been to WrestleMania, I've been to tables, ladders, and chairs, I've been to Raws, I've been to Thunders. That that show at Pikeville was the best wrestling event I'd ever been at. And
Oh,
I
really?
mean, I'm telling you, dude, it was Arn Anderson was up there with the Rock and Roll Express against the Stud Stable, and I think the Heavenly Bodies. It was like a three-way tornado tag street fight. You had Kevin Sullivan and Wrath, or not Wrath, Adams or Adam. It was Adam Bomb Wrath, Night
Mhm.
Stalker, same dude. And
Right.
I can just remember being there and it being like, have you ever been to the old Pikeville College gym?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
Been a
mean,
long
back in the
time, but
day, it was. Well, I went and watched WCW first there, but I was real tiny and don't really remember it that great. But just going up there with my dad and getting to watch it and enjoy it, and the product, looking back on it, was as good as any product I'd seen. I mean, Cornette really had it going on. Um,
mm,
Another one, Starcade '86, that tape. I go back to those tapes, that VHS tape, and I don't know how I didn't wear it out. I don't know how it didn't tear up because every day I got home from school, I would put that tape in and I'd watch these matches and I'd go out to my trampoline and try to recreate the spots and everything. Those Starcade '86 was my favorite event ever, and I learned so much from every worker on that tape. So that was awesome. That never really, WWF really didn't appeal to me that much until,
mm.
I honestly, in the Monday Night Wars, when the first time I ever switched away from Nitro was when Stone Cold and Mankind had the toughest SOB match. I don't know if you remember it or not, but they just started the show off, and it was awesome. Then I started kind of leaning towards WWF a little bit.
Was that pre Dude Love?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking
I mean,
about.
they
Yeah.
opened, and this was before. I mean, this was when Stone Cold was actually still using the Ringmaster theme, I think. So this was
Oh,
before him and Bret Hart even had their feud. And I can remember
oh,
watching that
really?
match, and I was like, "Dude, it won't be long, and they'll be back on top."
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I vaguely remember that match between Mankind and Stone Cold, but like that's one I would like to go back and watch and
Yeah, me
revisit.
too. Toughest SOB. That was what they were calling the match. Like, and it was a good one because I can remember, Mick Foley always took those bumps on the steps, and
Mhm.
that was like the first time I had ever seen it. And Austin, shoots him off, and he hits those steps and flips over him, and I was like, man, this is
Man, like I tell you, Mick does the best like step spots that there is in
yes,
wrestling. I
yes,
mean,
he
there's no one that does it better when you take a bump over those steps. I mean, he does it the best. I mean,
I don't know how. I swear, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure his body's tore out of pieces, but compared to a lot of guys, he should not even be able to get off the couch. I mean, good
well,
grief.
that's very true. And it's funny you mentioned Starcade 86. So that was one that me and Wes from Dead Pit was talking about when he was here on the show. That was a tape that both me and him like both rented like from the video store in Prestonsburg, Kentucky, like over and over, like because he
Yes.
did it. And this was way before me and him ever knew each other. So like it's just funny that we were like both renting that same tape from the same exact video store. And because that it was actually my older brother who kind of helped me get into wrestling when I was a kid. He's the one that like kind of showed me that tape. He's like, "Hey, you need to rent this tape and
Yes.
check out this out." Because '86, that was the year I was born, so
Yeah.
I didn't get to see that when it first happened. But like just going back and watching that, it really just gave me an appreciation even more than what I already did. And just like it made me just look at wrestling in just a whole different light after watching because, when I got into wrestling, I watched WCW in the early 90s and WWF and stuff. But like going back and watching that NWA stuff, it kind of gives you this even more of appreciation than what,
Yes.
but because it's like what they would call back in the day, like the real man's
Real
wrestling,
man. Yeah, that's
because
basically how it was.
they would legit just do whatever it took, to give entertainment to the audience. And I mean, just absolutely beat the shit out of each other.
And I think it was the Attitude Era before the Attitude Era
Yes, I
without
agree.
the vulgarity and the goofy storylines, but the realism and they done some really edgy stuff back in the mid '80s.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. And another match that me and him was talking about was the I Quit cage match between Tully Blanchard and Magnum
Dude,
TA.
that's one of my
Well,
top five favorite matches
yeah,
ever.
absolutely one of the best matches ever. And like that, I mean, they absolutely just went all out on each other. And I'm glad that you mentioned that Tully Blanchard was one of those guys for you when you were
Yes.
growing up. Do you feel like they that Flair, he kind of recognized the talent in Blanchard and just kind of he said, okay, well, we don't want this guy to be bigger than me,
I
so they
thought that.
so they
I
put him in the
thought that.
Horseman
I've talked to
because
Tommy Rich about that. I mean, I've talked to other guys about that. because I get to ride up and down the road with these guys, and I just pick their brains like
Hmm.
about my favorite workers, memories, and I've talked to Tommy about it. And I've been like, dude, do you think that Flair might have been a little scared
I
that
think
he could have
so.
got passed up because Tully was a legitimate heel. He wasn't out there. They were booing him. They hated him. He was the only horseman that never got an applause. So as a guy like Flair's your heel champ, that's got to be a little for your spot. You got to kind of worry about it.
Yeah, and if you look at guys like Magnum TA as well, I mean, look at what a star he was, man. And if it weren't for that accident that he had, I mean, it's untelling how far he would have went.
And I'm glad Dark Side of the Ring done a Magnum TA
Mhm.
episode because there's so many young guys now, and there's so many kids that's in the wrestling that don't know anything about Magnum TA. But he
Exactly, man.
was going to be the W or the NWA version of Hogan. I
Yeah.
mean, without a over the top gimmick, he was just a ruggedly handsome guy on a motorcycle that women liked and men liked. I mean, so it was he just had the charisma and being close with Dusty didn't hurt either.
Oh yeah, man, and I love that team you did Dusty when they were wearing the big like fur coats and
America's
everything.
team.
Oh man, that's just good. And I have a nephew who's really big into wrestling right now. He's just 7 years old, and I try to show him all this old stuff as much as I can, because I mean he loves the new stuff, of course, like all kids his age do. WWE, AEW, whatever they're watching on TV. But I try to show him a lot of that classic stuff to be like, hey, if you want to show something to your friends that like wrestling, you want to talk to them about something cool, talk about this.
You went
You
down the
know,
same route that I did with my kid. My little boy is 16 now, but when he was five, anywhere from five on up, when he was older, we'd pull the mattress in the living room when the WWF network just came out or WWE network just came out. And I would take him back and show him all the old NWA, all OEC or ECW. So once these classic wrestlers started coming out to buy, he was already ahead of the game. He remembered watching those and
mm,
he was like, he always talked. He said, "Man, I'm sad some of my friends didn't get to grow up and see the type of wrestling you showed me." He said they've been
yeah.
deprived.
Well, right now I'm teaching my nephew a lot about ECW from the
Yeah,
'90s and stuff, and the kind of history with that, and he's really interested in it. And like, I told him like because he really likes Sabu,
yeah,
and I said, well, I actually got to meet Sabu, and unfortunately, it was a month before he passed away.
yeah,
That was the event that I actually met you in person for the first
hmm
time as
yeah.
well. So I mean, it's crazy. Like I'm really glad that he's getting into that stuff. And he appreciates it. Like I do. But and hopefully he kind of sticks with that. But moving on now, just want to ask you because so you still watch wrestling like as a fan these days?
I don't watch the current product. I feel bad for saying that, but nothing's ever grabbed my attention. Like I still watch pro wrestling. I still go back and study it every day, but it's not the current product. It's being a worker myself. I don't see anything like the style today is not my style. Like
Hmm.
I'm not about the fast pace, the dives. I like to tell a story. I like to study selling. Who better to study than Ricky Morton, Tommy Rich,
Oh
and
yeah.
you can do all these moves, but the crowd doesn't have time to let it soak in. That was the way I was taught. You got to tell a story. You got to sell it the right way. And there's so many. The beautiful thing about wrestling is there's a heck of a library out there, so you can always go back and find something new, even if it's 30, 40 years old. And so yeah, I took my son to SmackDown and the UFC last year. I will say that I like LA Knight. I like his character. Um,
He feels like an old school guy,
he
sort of.
feels like from what I've seen, and I was telling my cousin this last night. To me, it's almost like when DDP got himself over in the mid '90s.
That's a good comparison.
He got himself over as the people's champ. It wasn't nothing from the back. He just got over, and people started liking him. Eventually, they put him over, and they pushed him to the moon. With LA Knight, it's like he's got that appeal. The crowd likes him. He's got charisma. He's a throwback on the mic. But it's like they're going to fool around. If they're going to do the payoff, they better do it soon because you can only hold on to that momentum for so long before people
Right.
stop caring.
I see we got Born to be Rad in the chat. So it says, "Yo, homies, how's it going, man? Glad to have you in here."
Yeah,
Uh,
awesome, bro. Glad to join
so,
us.
so that's Garrett. I just had him on the show the other night. We had a really cool conversation. We talked a lot about ECW, and me and Garrett, we do another show on YouTube over on the Dead Pit channel called WrestleManiacs, and it's kind of just from here, and it's not something we do often. We mainly just kind of we've been covering like the bigger events like Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, the big four in
Yeah,
WWE every year. But we've been talking about doing some like old school, going back and rewatching some old school stuff. We were talking about some ECW stuff. We might go back and rewatch and cover that over on the WrestleManiac show. Um, but glad to have you here, man. I appreciate that.
dude, I'm
Um,
tickled to death to be on here. You got a good thing going, buddy.
Oh yeah, man. I appreciate it. I hope I can go far with this. Like I said, I'm just starting this out, so but I'm having a ton of fun with it, man, because this is what I love to do. I love talking wrestling with it, and I'm somebody that doesn't know a stranger, so I'll have a lot of people on here that I probably even never met before in my life.
I'm the
You know, I
same
I,
way. I've been
I would
told
just
that myself that I've never met a stranger. So we're in the like we're cut from the same cloth.
so let me ask you, Adam. So you don't watch the current product, but you are familiar with it. You said you took your son to SmackDown and all that. So, what is something if you could change, in wrestling today and the style that they have, what is something that you would change in that?
I think, and I've thought about this actually. I think to me, as a fan, the biggest problem is everybody looks the same. Nobody really stands out. Everybody kind of looks like college kids to me, and I don't know why. It's oversaturated. I think I started losing interest back when they originally done the brand split. I don't like the brand split. I think if you're the best, you need to be on both shows. There needs to be one title, and that's the way it's got to be. If I were, if I was over a company on TV or something like that, I would try to dial it back and take it back. And I thought AEW was going to go that route, but it's just more or less that it kind of started out on a positive note in my eyes because I was watching it for a while. They brought some old guys back to manage and some interesting characters. I like the character development over there, and then kind of just it kind of just started going down familiar territory, and the same way with WWE. And it's just to me, wrestling was tough men, different. You look at the missing link. People like it. They were different. They were.
Yeah.
Nowadays they just look like college kids out there, and I miss the days of just tough men, and
Do you think so as what a lot of the the physiques and everything look like nowadays as compared to back in the 80s or the 90s per se, um what do you think really changed in and like what they look for nowadays as opposed to back then?
drug testing.
Well, yeah, that's one of
Yeah,
them for sure.
I think when Vince went to court over the steroid trials and Hogan come back about 60 pounds lighter, I think that was the start of that. But no,
Yeah.
but to be honest, and not to take anything away from Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart or Eddie Guerrero, but because they were the greatest workers of all time. But before that, they were the heavyweight. They were monsters. You know what I mean? They were big dudes.
Oh yeah.
So once that started changing, and you had Shawn Michaels and Vader, you had Shawn Michaels and Sid, or you had Bret Hart and Undertaker. It was all these big guys having to work the smaller caliber dudes, and they had great matches, but it was kind of like it got to the point to where, to me, you'd have two guys that was 215 pounds working for the heavyweight title, and it didn't happen all the time, but it kind of took it away for me. And I like Jericho a lot, but he's a smaller guy and everything. And he was in the title picture. Rob Van Dam, I like Rob Van Dam a lot. You just seen these heavyweight champions get smaller physically. Not as imposing.
Do you think that that hurts the appeal for some people?
I do. I do. We take us as kids, Yokozuna. I mean, he was something to see. He was you didn't see many people like that. You, if you've got a guy that's that big and can work, and not just an attraction. Andre back in the '70s was a worker too. He got hurt. His knees started getting problems. Big Show was the Giant in '96, '95. That was one of the best in ring wrestlers I'd ever seen in my life. He could do a drop kick off the top rope. I mean, he was just amazing. And they kind of dropped the ball with him, I felt like. But it does. You've got to have, and I think WWE tried it with Great Khali, and they get
Mhm.
these big guys like that, but they weren't believable. I mean, I hate to say that because they were huge, but Khali, if I'm a kid and I'm watching him walk to the ring, his knees can't even
Yeah.
bend. It's kind of. But Sid Vicious is a great example. He was a monster. When
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're a kid and he come on TV, you're like, who is that?
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Sid too, especially like when he was doing the Psycho Sid stuff in there in the mid '90s. And
I liked him with the skyscrapers. Him and Dan Spivey. I
oh
like
yeah,
him.
yeah, I love that too. And
I
even
like.
a lot of people shit on like the late '90s WCW stuff.
I thought he done
Um,
wonderful there, man. I went back and
I loved
rewatched
him there.
some.
Yeah, I thought, it was,
Yeah,
and even the little short stint he had in ECW there for a
ECW
while.
come out and give the Dudley Boys that double choke slam. I remember.
Yeah, man, Sid was that's I got to meet
But
Sid.
Arn Anderson said it. He said he don't know anybody in professional wrestling that had a better look for the business than him.
And Garrett says the skyscrapers were amazing.
Yes,
And
very
you know,
underrated.
I've I can tell you a little bit about like what I've seen. I need to expose myself more to the skyscrapers, but I have watched some of their stuff from back then when with it was Sid and Dan Spivey. But like I need to watch a little bit more and kind of like get my game up on skyscraper
Do you
stuff.
remember their entrance music? What it was?
I can't know.
The Scorpions, China White.
Really?
Yes.
Oh
So
my
see it
god.
later on in the '90s, the late '90s WCW we was just talking about. They pretty much took the words out of it and reworked it, and you can still
Ah,
tell it's the
okay.
the same thing, kind of like they did with Shane Douglas and Perfect Strangers from Deep Purple.
Well, they
You
did
know,
that a lot with guys, I think, in the '90s.
I
Like
love that. Rick Rude came out to instrumental version, tweaked a little bit of Janet Jackson's Black Cat, and I loved it. I thought it was killer.
and they did that all the time, like in WCW in the mid '90s, because Jimmy Hart, I think, was doing
Yeah, he
like
was
music at the time, and like so they had Chris Jericho was coming out to like a rip off
even
version of
flow.
Even Flow by Pearl Jam, and DDP's was Smell Like Teen Spirit, but like the knockoff version. Um,
That's cool. I
and
forgot all about Even Flow until you said Chris Jericho, and then it come right back to me.
there were so many of those, but it's funny like that they used all those like knockoff versions of these songs, but Hogan got to actually use Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child.
Hey, I'll tell you my favorite knockoff song that was used that we're talking about was when the Outsiders first came in, and they used a version of Seal's "Crazy," but it
Is
was
that what that is? Because I never could
yes.
tell what that was.
That was the singer Seal. He had a song in the early '90s called "Crazy,"
Yeah,
and man, it is. If you get a chance, go back and listen to that Outsiders original music.
I can hear
Dude,
it in my
it is
head right
awesome.
now. Like, yeah, I
It
can
was the
see that
Bash at the
now. I never
Beach
realized
theme
that.
too. They used
Hmm.
it for the theme of Bash at the Beach. But it was, dude, that was because I was listening to Eric Bischoff and Conrad not too long ago, and they were talking about it. And Eric Bischoff didn't even know that it was Seal Crazy. He thought they were using Van Halen's Right Now. And they were like, no, that wasn't what that was. That was Crazy by Seal.
It's funny you mentioned about like this theme music and stuff because, like, when the Road Warriors came out to Iron Man by Black
Hmm.
Sabbath, that's how I got into Black Sabbath and
Yeah. I mean,
Ozzy and all that.
how many people went out and got Jimi Hendrix greatest hits after Hogan started using,
Exactly, man. Like,
I mean, it
and
just
I love when
influenced.
they do. I love when wrestling does that. Like when they can bring these songs from these different actual musicians and stuff into wrestling, and it kind of turns people that would never listen to that kind of music any other time onto that. And I love when anything does it. Like I can use Stranger Things as an example. Like,
Yeah.
when they had Master of Puppets by Metallica on Stranger Things,
How many
look
more
at
downloads did that get?
exactly.
I see
And you
6, 7 year old kids playing guitar, like around here, learning to play Master of Puppets. Like I seen a kid that I know, he's probably in 4th or 5th grade, and his parents have been recently taking him to get guitar lessons, and she posted a video of him. So obviously the kid's got to be a Stranger Things fan and see that, and it's influenced him. I mean, it's
exactly.
wild.
And my son, he's 13 now, but like, a few years ago when that season 4 of Stranger Things came out and they played that's the first time he ever heard Metallica, and
Yeah.
now it's his favorite band. Well,
I mean,
one of them. I think his favorite band right now is Judas Priest, but it got him. It's what got him into heavy metal. So
that's awesome, dude. And that's the beauty of that's just the beauty of art and using certain nostalgic things at a time nowadays that it gets over with that kids and they go back and they start digging deep into that
yeah,
stuff and then they're like, oh, I like this too. And then they just start downloading away and discovering a band that they like or something.
yeah, and that's what me and my wife were talking about not long ago because we're both big heavy metal fans, and like
Mhm.
we'd always talk about like, well, we'd like to let our son listen to this band or that band or whatever, but it's got to the point now where we don't even have to. Like
No, he's telling you about
he's
it.
finding it himself. I'm like, he's telling me about Iron Maiden, he's telling me about Kiss, he's telling me like all these different bands that I already love that I was planning on telling him about, but I'm like, damn, he's already figured this out for
I'm
himself.
going through it right now because Stone Temple Pilots is my favorite band ever, and
Really
my
awesome, man.
son has got real deep into them, and he's going to high school now, and all of a sudden I'll get a song from Shangri La Da or Tiny gift shop, and it's just like he's like, "Do you like this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like this. I love them all." But to see him digging deep, and it's kind of cool because he has to like them to find a song that not a lot of people probably think's
Oh yeah.
popular, but he likes it. So it's a pretty cool moment as a father. I know exactly how you feel on that.
Yeah, man, I definitely I love that. It gives me this like very just this I can't even describe it, man. It's a
I know
feeling I can't
exactly what you're saying.
describe.
Yes.
But yeah, but you get it for sure. But let me ask you now. So I know this is kind of a cliche question and a lot of people will ask, but when it comes to your favorites of all time, not necessarily who you think is the greatest of all time, but just your 4 personal favorites of all time, who is on that Mount Rushmore for you?
Oh, hold on, I'm gonna show you a little bit here. I've got my wall right here. You might be able to see it a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, so you see Tully Blanchard.
Mm-hmm.
Above Tully is the loose cannon Brian Pillman. Above Brian Pillman is Rick Rude and Medusa. Okay, so those are definitely the three that influenced me more than anyone. But if I had to have another one, Crater, I would probably, once I become a worker, I found out I was a lot like Scott Hall. Um, I
I
didn't
love to
really
hear that.
realize it at the time, but my in-ring work and the guy I was trained by was a huge Shawn Michaels fan. And when he was training me, we just had a connection. Like I was bigger and stronger, had I had hair on my chest and the beard. I kind of had a Scott Hall look. And the more I studied Scott Hall and realized how underrated he was a big guy that didn't care to sell. And that, I've been told that about myself by people in other companies that I'll just show up and work at. And they'll be, they said, one guy said to me, he said, a man your size that will sell is worth its weight in gold. And I didn't really realize what he meant. But as I got older and stuff, it started dawning on me like a big guy that don't care to sell can make somebody look really good.
Oh yeah.
A good baby face fighting from underneath. I mean, so Scott Hall, I would have never, when I first got into wrestling, I had to study on a character because I wanted to make an instant impact. I
Right.
wanted something to grab people's attention. I needed something edgy, but not over the top. So I started thinking and working on a character while I was training, and I'd already had it. It was going to be it was the ticking time bomb. It was a Brian Pillman, very
Mhm.
close to Brian Pillman and Terry Funk kind of deal. Um, so as I'm training and developing in this character, Ken Cantrell and me come up with a game plan.
Mhm.
Nobody else knows this. I mean, nobody's made aware of this. I've talked to Ken, and he wants me to come in that night. Not even the other person that owns the company knows this. So we had planned on me coming in and causing a disturbance at the rec center in Paintsville. So I don't even think Lisa knew this at this point. That's Ken's wife.
Right. Yeah.
So he didn't smart nobody up. So after the second match, I stood up in a chair and just started clapping and hollering and causing a scene. And the other owner comes over and starts like going back and forth with me, and I just cut off a crazy promo. I mean, it was like, I'd be ashamed to put this product and these workers out here when I'm a legit shooter, and I mean, I was just going off. And Ken had talked to the constable in Paintsville behind everybody's back and said, "Listen, I need you to escort this dude out when he makes a scene." So the crowd don't know what's going on. They don't know if it's a shoot or a work or
That's
what.
awesome. Is there
Yeah,
video
so
of
I
this?
get took out in a handcuffs by the constable, and it was just like I left, and Ken messaged me after the show and said, "Well, nobody remembers the rest of the show. They just they all they talked about was you getting took
Hey,
out."
man, that's what works, dude. Like, like Eric Bischoff says, controversy creates cash.
That's what
And
I knew that I had to make an impact and make it fast. And I studied Pillman. I studied his promos. I studied, I mean, just he was on the edge, and I liked that. It was easy for me being intense and over the top, without, like I said, being riding that razor line without looking stupid, wanting to make it look as real as I possibly could,
mhm,
because there was a lot of people at the rec center that night, and nobody except Ken knew, and that and that constable that had to take me out, they were the only two that knew.
that's awesome, man. I love that. Is there video of that anywhere?
There's pictures. There was video. There was some old man with a cane that had chased me out. Yeah, that's a shoot. He came out and with that cane, and he was going to hit me. I mean, it was, and it's the first time I'd ever been involved in something like that. And I was just like, "Was that good?" And Ken's like, "Well, you had somebody chase you outside with a cane." He said, "In professional wrestling, that's as good as it gets."
Oh man, you gotta love the crowds in
Yes.
Eastern Kentucky local wrestling events. That's one of my favorite things to do. I mean, I love going for the wrestling events themselves, but just I love watching other people react to the
Yes.
event itself too. And like people around here, dude, you know how it is. They get worked up. I mean, they especially these older folks that come to the show.
Yes.
They get into it, man. I love to see that.
And that's the beauty of being a wrestler, is to get you, if you don't care about that reaction, if you don't thrive to get that reaction, then you shouldn't even be here. Every guy that goes through that curtain should want to get the most emotion, the most you want, whether you want them to hate you or whether you want them to come in the ring and fight for you. You
Yeah,
got to want that, because if not, you're wasting your time. And
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, that's the way I feel about it.
Oh, I 100% agree with that, man. Like if you're not in this for the moment, for the reactions, for everything that's exists around you in that atmosphere, then you're wasting your time. I feel like that's just what I've garnered as as a wrestling fan for the past 36 years now. So,
Well, what
um,
I study, I'm a huge horror movie fan, and I'm also a huge fan of classic rock. So,
mhm,
I study these front men that are showmen and entertainers, and I mean, Axl Rose, David Lee Roth, Scott Weiland, all these, Mick Jagger, and people that can control an audience,
yeah.
and I implement that into my game and into my character and stuff. And like it's crazy how a showman, whether you're a pro wrestler, whether you're a rock and roll front man or a comedian or something, being a showman, you've got to have charisma. They all have certain amount of charisma, and to watch them work an audience, watch them get the most out of their emotions. It's an art. It really is.
Hmm. And I'm really glad that you mentioned Pillman was on your Mount Rushmore, your personal favorites.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
I'm loving all the Pillman love here lately because Garrett, who was just on the last show I did, he also said that Pillman was on his Mount Rushmore personal favorites. So I love that. I've been a big fan of Pillman for years, and just unfortunately, he's another guy. It just his career got cut short, just due to him passing away and just just other things that was going on at the time with it. So.
If that car wreck hadn't happened, because I talked to Shane about this not too long ago, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Was Pillman always wild? Was he always?" He's like, "No." He's like, Brian was like a virgin when he first came into the business. He's like, "Man, he didn't drink hardly. He didn't take drugs." He said when that Hummer wreck happened,
Mhm.
it wasn't that he was wanting to party and get wild. It was that he was in so much pain with that
Right.
ankle that he loved the business so much that he was going to do whatever it took to get back in the ring, because they didn't even want him back in the ring. They wanted him being an announcer. Jim Ross said, "Man, just be an announcer, a manager," and he felt like it was a step down. I mean, it was just his competitive nature, you know. And he was
Mhm.
tough too. Pillman was a shooter. Pillman could fight. Pillman,
Oh, yeah,
you know,
oh, yeah, man, like,
there's some good
I
stories about him I've heard.
there's so and I think was it Pillman the first ever cruiserweight champion in WCW?
Lightweight. They done the light heavyweight
Right, okay, then
yeah,
they switched it over to
to
cruiserweight, okay.
cruiserweight. Yeah, who was it? Him and Brad Armstrong maybe wrestling, or Jushin Thunder Liger? I can't remember.
Well, I know that him and Jushin Thunder Liger was the first ever match on WCW Monday Nitro back in '95, and
They
that
the one before that at Super Brawl that was even better
yeah,
than that.
their matches were always fantastic, but I'll tell you that match that they had on that first Nitro was the best thing on that whole Nitro.
It opened the show up. They knew then. They
Yeah.
said, we got to do something special to open this show up. And Buddy did not disappoint. And you know the wild thing is when I'm coming up this character, I'm 6'2". At that time, I was probably 245, 250, and I'm like, all right, I got to be this type of Pillman character, but
Mhm.
I'm not as athletic as he is, obviously. So how do I implement that persona into a big brawler type? So
Right.
that's kind of the thing I had to juggle with that. And if it hadn't been for that brute or that loose cannon Brian Pillman character, I don't know that I would have made the immediate impact that I had made, because it was tailor made right down my alley, and I was able to pull it off on a level around here that really people dug.
Yeah, man, and I can just see it from the moment I saw you before I ever met you, got to see you wrestle in person, just watching your stuff online. I could see those influences from Rick Rude and Brian
Yeah.
Pillman and guys like Sid and I was like, damn, I was like, and you have an absolutely good look, man, for good physique as a wrestler that you said you built that like kind of around the whole like the way those guys from the '80s looked in the NWA. And I mean, I love to see that. I love like these old school looks for wrestlers,
Yes. Yes.
and I think that there should be more and more of that. I mean, there's a lot of guys like that on the independent scene. Unfortunately, there's not enough of it,
Yeah.
on the mainstream stuff. But I think that there should be, man, because people love that shit, dude.
Well, a lot of the independent, I've been in the business now for 11 years, I think. And most of the time when I go work a show, and I hate to say it, sound like this or say this, I'm 41 years old now, and 8 times out of 10, I'm one of the best. I have one of the best physiques in the dressing room. When there's guys in there 20, 25 year old, it should be
Yeah.
taking it a lot more serious and looking as good as they possibly can. I mean, I'm, 3 days a week I work out for 3 hours, and if I can't look a certain way in front of an audience, I don't want to be seen. Like, I take that much pride in my product and in
Well,
my
you have
appearance.
to, man. Yeah, you
You
absolutely have
should, but
to.
a lot of people don't. I mean, that's the shame in it, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of guys that would just rather go out there in an old cut up t-shirt and a pair of jogging pants. And to me, you take a family. We're living in a time when money's tight. We're living in a time when you know you want to be able, if a family brings their child out to watch wrestling, you want to give them the best looking wrestler that they can see and believe in. I want them to say that big dude right there, he could be on TV. That's kind of what I
Yeah,
aim
and
for.
I have full confidence, man, in you. I think that you will get there one of these days. Like, and hopefully it doesn't take too long because I mean you definitely deserve to be there just amongst everyone else that's there.
Well,
I feel
the window crater is closing. I'm a realist, but I honestly feel like, and I've had guys with some major. I'll tell you what, and I've had guys that's been there and done that at a high level make the remark to me that if I had been around in their time, that I would have been part of the part of the gig. And to me, I can live with that. I can, I've got a family. I've got my home gym. I work kids out here. I do, I've got a lot of stuff going on. And in my mind, it's like I can relax a little bit if I have a certain person that is in a Hall of Fame and WWE tell me that. So I can kind of rest my head at night and say, you know what? I could have maybe done it, possibly.
Yeah, but just keep confidence in yourself, man. You never know. I mean, look at DDP. His
Yeah.
career didn't really take off until he was around your age.
Yeah.
So, I mean, crazier things have happened for sure. So just, keep it up, man. Do all that good work that you're already doing out there, and I think big things are going to happen for you, man.
Well,
Uh,
I've been blessed, buddy. I mean, if something happened to me tomorrow, I consider myself a rich man, and I'd probably, I mean, I've been able to do a lot of things I dreamed of as a kid. Maybe not wrestling in the Omni, maybe not fighting in Vegas, but I got to do that, and I got to compete and perform in my area, around my hometowns,
yeah,
and
man.
up and down the road. So I'm very, very, very thankful to the good Lord above that I was able to do that, fulfill that.
So let's talk a little bit about your career as a professional wrestler. So you spoke a little bit about at the beginning of this show, but like, can you give us a little bit more of uh, a wider, a deeper, wider version of that story of as a professional wrestler? How did you get into becoming a wrestler?
I was like, honestly, like I said, I was laying on the couch one night after I'd pulled, or I didn't pull out of the fight, but the MMA title fight had got canceled and postponed, and I'd come to terms that night with I don't want to go on doing that anymore. I was thankful I got to do it. Thankful I had a few good fights, and I didn't want to have to train a lot and be away from my boy was young, and I was having to spend 3 4 days away. Just I got to do it. It was all right. But my little boy started getting into wrestling, and I loved wrestling. So I was kind of like, you know what? Maybe I can get into this. He can go to the shows with me, and who knows what might happen. So I laid on the couch one night and I thought about it for 2 or 3 hours, and I was like, all right, when I get up in the morning, I'm gonna run down to Bull Creek because I talked to Ken just a little bit. He's like, yeah, I'll have your form. I'll have your form down here. Come get it, fill it out. Get your license and send it in. And once your license, I have an idea who I want to train you. Once he's seen me and seen that, I guess that I looked presentable. I guess you would say he kind of. I mean, he's told me that he had Michael Jameson in mind to train me. And Mikey,
Oh yeah, I remember Michael.
he was one of the best around here, man. Like top guys to ever do it, perform. I mean, he's the guy. Him, Kobe Carmichael, and Bart Batten helped start training me. Bart Batten was, the Batten twins. Him and Brad, and they wrestled in WCW, NWA, Smoky Mountain, Puerto Rico, you name it. Bart and Brad was there, and we started training the MMA dojo up. Shelby Anna, I used to train there, and Sidney Klein was nice enough to let us use the top part of that to work on lockups, headlock takeovers, and just chain wrestling. Everything I couldn't do in a ring, we started doing there. So by the time I was able to get in a ring and bump and hit the ropes and stuff, I was already pretty advanced in other aspects. So it didn't really, once I learned to bump and hit the ropes, I was kind of ring ready, but not really psychologically ready. Like I still had a lot of work to do on how to figure out how to work matches and
Mhm.
when to bump, how to sell. And being with Mikey and Kobe, I was able to learn from two of the best around here. So it was easy for me. Ken pretty much put me in a solid spot immediately. Um, Mikey was in. I come back after I got threw out. Right? You remember the story I told you earlier? I got threw out, so I come back and apologized about a month later, and they probably forgot about me. So I was sitting in the front row watching the show. Nobody knew I was there for anything, just to watch the show. And in the title match, it was a DVD taping. Mikey is working Eugene Waldo, and Eugene Waldo goes to put him in the pedigree, and Mikey does this. And I get up out of my seat, go into the ring, hook the Scorpion Death Drop, land Eugene Waldo, hit the ref. Now I'm panicking, don't know what to do. I go back and grab another ref, and everybody's losing their mind right now. They can't believe this because they didn't see it coming. So we formed a faction by the end of the night, WTF, Women Titles and Fame, and we rode that out for a long time. And we had a real good run with it. It was we came out to Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, that's
It,
awesome.
it was it was real good, honestly. And Mikey was a natural born heel. The crowd, I'll never forget. We were at Wheelwright, and the crowd had already started turning me babyface. It wasn't a company deal; it was the crowd, and I hadn't even realized it. Like I was still so green that I didn't realize that the crowd was behind me. And as I walked back through the curtain, Ken standing there with his arms crossed and had a funny look. And I said, "What is it?" He said, "By the time, but in 2 months, you'll be the most over babyface this area has ever seen." And I thought he was working me. I was laughing. I said, "Yeah, we'll see. They hate me." He said, "Yeah, they hate you." He said, "They hate you. We'll see in 2 months."
I mean, and I've seen it, firsthand. I've been in these shows you've wrestled at, and I mean, the audience loves you, dude. And you mentioned Eugene Waldo. I mean, like I remember watching shows, and at one point I thought he was like the John Cena of Eastern Kentucky because people went nuts for him, man, when he would come out, for his matches. But
He got the
compared,
biggest pop, dude. Like he he did. They would hit that music, and he'd start when he was really wanting to work and was really into it, and they'd hit that music, and he'd start dancing, and he'd get them old women out there. He was the most beloved wrestler I've seen around here.
it was crazy, man. And unfortunately, he did pass away not too long
Great guy,
ago.
man. Great guy.
I mean, I always love seeing him show. I love seeing the audience just go wild for him, man. And I'm really glad, that you were able to kind of get that same, momentum that he got as well. And people, like I said, I've been to these shows, I've seen you wrestle, and people love you, dude, and I love to see it. Um, so. You've worked with a lot of guys, especially a lot of legends, in wrestling. Are there any memorable matches or moments that you've had that stick out to you, during your career with those guys, or maybe just someone else that's not a wrestling legend? Is there any kind of moments like that?
The My first wrestling match ever was against Bobby Fulton out of nowhere. So Bobby from the Fantastics was coming down to BCW just randomly.
Hmm.
So I had been training, and we were at Martin for a show real early in the day, and Bobby and his son was down there, and Ken was talking to him, and I came walking up, and Bobby didn't know who he was working or anything, and Ken was talking, and he said he's not worked yet, talking about me, he said he's yet to make his debut, and Bobby's like, well, let me work him. So I got to work Bobby Fulton for about 8 minutes.
Your
It
first
was my
match.
first match ever, and I was about to have a panic attack, man. I mean, we wouldn't work. I mean, we were just simply in there, and it was not strenuous or nothing. But I was so nervous and was worried I was too stiff, or and I was just he taught me more in about 8 minutes. Like he was telling me, take me over here to the camera, choke me here in front of the camera. He was telling me little things like that, and I was just like, "Holy cow, this makes a lot of sense. I see what he's doing here." And work this arm, cut me off, and I mean, we just for about 8 minutes, and I didn't even realize what a moment that was until later on down the road. But that was the first match I ever had, and then I'd go on. Me and Barbarian had a series of matches
Oh
where
yeah.
he beat me for the belt over at South Lloyd. Then we come back down to Betsy Lane at the Dome for a street fight, and it was, I mean, he took a drink of a pop. He took a fan's pop and took one drink of it. It was full. He took one drink and boom, hit me right in the forehead. So, I mean, and what's sad is Barb told me it was going to be easier than the night before, and he absolutely went out there and beat me to death and worked his hind end off. taking back body drops. Uh, he was bumping all over the place, and it had got back to people he had worked with, and they were like, "I can't believe Barb did that last night." And me and Barb are close. Like, I mean, he's kind of like a mentor to me. We're when he comes in, he don't party or anything. He's a family man. He lifts
Yeah, he's
weights,
cool as hell, man.
and he's a teddy bear, dude. Like, to see it's somebody kind of like I look kind of like look up to a lot because he's capable of ripping your throat out, but you would never know it because he's just that good of a guy. I mean,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and you know, if you can't get along with Barb, you can't get along with nobody. And then Shane Douglas, me and Shane's had a series of good matches, and we had that street fight at John M when him and Onyx broke my neck, and they took me out in an ambulance, and the heat they got that night, and this was last summer. Like, this wasn't awful. This wasn't long ago at all. But they had stuck my neck in a chair, like they done Pillman's ankle, and stomped the chair.
Mm.
And the ambulance had to come and haul me out and stuff. And the fans were like chasing Onyx and Shane to the car. And it was so old school. Like, there was a video camera that was filming it all and everything. It was so old school, man, that I had to throw a neck brace on, and I had to I was in bad shape for a while. I'll just put it to you like that.
And Onyx is another guy I would love to get on the show sometime and talk with him because I've known him for a really long time as
Oh,
well. Um,
he's a bad dude, buddy. He is a bad dude.
So back in I think it was 2008, I was living in Huntington, West Virginia, and at the time there was a promotion over there called 304 Wrestling. And that's where I got my first exposure to Onyx and a lot of those guys in that area. So like when I came to that show there, that where I met you at, and Sabu was there, and
Yeah.
um, I was kind of like surprised to see Onyx was there as well, and like we ended up having a conversation, like, oh my god, I haven't seen you in like years, man. So I would love to get him on the show sometime
He's
and
one of my
talk with
favorite
him.
opponents. He's one of my favorite opponents I've ever had, honestly. He's so good, like, as a worker. He knows what he brings to the table, and I have a ton of respect for him. He's a solid, but now he's mean. He's a tough dude for real. I mean,
Oh yeah,
he's
the
he's
Black
strong as
Superman.
strong gets.
Yeah, I love that dude, man. Like every time I see him, like now, like whether be in person or if I'm seeing him, on online, he's always busy doing something too. So like, I have a lot of respect for him for
Yeah,
sure.
he's always he's working seniors out, man, and older people, and I thrive to do that because I work kids out, and I see him working older people out. And I have so much respect for what
Yeah,
he
it's
does, trying
awesome.
to keep them in good shape and their longevity and everything, man. It's what it's about. I mean, it
Oh
is.
yeah, 100%, dude. So other than wrestling, of course, we talked a little bit about this. You're a huge horror movie fan as well, and as the human horror movie, what is your Mount Rushmore of horror movie characters?
Uh, Leatherface for sure would be number one. Then
Obviously.
I'd have Michael Myers, Jason, and Freddy. They would be the Mount Rushmore to
Mhm.
me. Now, a lot of people will have Jason, Freddy, and Michael Myers, and then they'll either have somebody else in that Leatherface role, whether it be Pinhead, Ghostface, Chucky. But to me, Leatherface is going to be, he's going to have his spot up there for what Texas Chainsaw Massacre done for history of film, not just horror movies, but that character of Leatherface to me is I see a lot of myself in him ever since I've been a kid. He's the youngest of three brothers. He's the stronger, the bigger, the one that's always controlled by the older brother. I always felt like me and my family had a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe to us, and that's kind of where the Newsome family slaughterhouse stuff comes from.
Right. And there's another guy out there, and I just had him on the show last week, Evil Nate Hewitt. So he's also has a horror wrestling gimmick. He brings out the chainsaw. He has the chainsaw from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 that he comes out with. Can we expect to see you guys possibly working together anytime in the future?
I've known Nate since Nate was 15 years old, and from the
Okay.
time we've met each other, it's about like us talking right here. When he worked at the video store down the road, we talked music, we talked scary movies, and we were on the same page about everything. and we got to finally run back into because he was wrestling at BCW while I was doing MMA and
Mhm.
fighting. He was already working. He was
Yeah,
modern
that's
day
when he was
miracle.
the Rock and Roll Revolution, Nate
Even before
Cross.
that, he was the modern day miracle, Nate
Right,
Cross.
right, yeah.
Then he was the front man from the land or something like I can't really Nate Cross. But then I got into it. He had already. There was actually. This is crazy. You brought that up. My first show. Right, I stayed backstage. Okay, so I was supposed to make my debut at BCW, but the plan had shifted. There was a possibility that if Nate came that night, that I was going to be his bodyguard. He didn't
Mm,
come. So we went, Mikey came in that night too, and he was a special guest ref. And then he turned heel at the end of the night. So then that aligned. But it's funny you brought that up because I totally forgot about it. As far as working with him, me and him's kind of talk. We'd like to do a tag match or something here together. I'll be doing a Halloween show down at Betsy Lane Community Park. Dude, I've been doing a Halloween event down there the last
yeah.
5 years, and there's thousands. There was like 1,300 people showed up year before last,
And
and
I see you doing that all the time too on your Facebook and stuff. And I'd love to come out to one of those one of these
oh
days.
gosh, dude,
So,
love to have you. We got food trucks. I get businesses, the schools to set up around the track and give out candy. We do costume contest. It's grown. This will be the fifth year right here, and my game plan, what I want to do so bad, but I'm dumb. Like I've got the connections and I know how to talk to people. But I want to bring somebody in from the horror world to do autographs and show their film that night after the event out in the park. That's like my big dream right there.
yeah,
And I
man.
don't know how to pull it off. Like I know it can be done, and I know the people that I could probably talk to, but like the fundraiser or the sponsors and this and that, I'm done when it comes to that.
No, man. I mean, it just takes some time, I think, to figure out anything that, because I mean, like, you're still, like, even though you've done a few of those events, I mean, it's still, the more work that you put into those over time, the more it's going to become, like simpler to you.
Yeah,
And man, I just I love what you're doing with that. Not only what you're doing for the state of wrestling in Kentucky, but also just the state of just the horror community in general by doing those events. So I really appreciate you, brother, for doing that.
well, hey, listen, don't appreciate it. You just come. You bring your family and come down, sit out, get you something to eat, give out candy around the track. I'm telling you, dude, we have a killer time. And like I said, we do it. Last year we had, gosh, I want to say we had 8 food trucks. We had sweet and scary sodas set up. It was perfect for the
Oh
occasion.
wow.
We had Marky's Chow Down food truck. We had smoking pigs, or I can't remember. We had my little cousin sets up her coffee, Holler Grounds coffee. It was awesome, dude. It was
So it's
really cool.
almost kind of like a mini festival or something.
It's that's the plan. That's when I first started this. Is what Slashers, the Prestonburg store. They'll come down and set up and
Hmm.
sell stuff. I want people that does crafts. I want them to come down and bring their Halloween crafts and sell. That's kind of my
Um,
big picture of it all.
or like, well, you should maybe like look into maybe finding some people that might be interested in doing some like workshops on
Yeah,
certain things too. It's like maybe like a mask making workshop or something. I
that would be
mean, because I think that would be awesome if you could figure out how to do that. I'm not sure where you would
right.
begin to
That's kind of
look.
my thing too. Is like figuring out. We got the great ideas and we can talk to the right people. It's just figuring out how to implicate it in. But that's a great idea.
I'll look into that too, man. If I find anything out, I'll let you know for sure.
Great. That'd be much appreciated, buddy.
So I got a few more questions for you, Adam. What is the best thing about being a professional wrestler, and what is also the worst thing?
The best thing about being a pro wrestler is the audience's reaction. There's not a feeling that everybody gets, but when you come out of that curtain and you feel the energy and you feel the attention that you get and other guys don't, that's like the ultimate feeling.
Mhm.
That's what I aim for. Like I've when I first started, I watched a lot of baby faces come out. They just come out and do the same thing, clap and say, "Come on."
Uh,
I studied The Rock, and when he would walk out, he'd make them wait for a second. I got to where I was getting good at figuring out my music at a right time to step through, and
Yeah.
then just look around with that mask on slowly, and then the crowd would just start going crazy, and that's when I got that rush. And then once I took the mask off and let a big scream, and then that's one of my favorite parts, and just being able to perform. And do what you've always wanted to do as a kid. You just got to take it
Yeah.
serious. And but a bonus situation is being able to meet the guys you grew up,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
that's I
watching.
can't imagine, man. Like I see that, like when where you get to work with these guys, like that I love growing up, especially like guys like Shane Douglas, because I'm a huge ECW guy, and that's another guy. And we were talking about Rick Rude earlier about how he's underrated.
Mhm.
Shane Douglas, another super underrated guy. So I mean, getting to see you
The,
work with
the
him, like
thing
I'm envious, man.
the thing with Shane is we had such a great storyline that was getting ready to be paid off, and then the company folded there and went on a hiatus. And
Hmm.
Shane was calling me, and he was not happy because Shane's not the type of guy that just goes out and have singles matches every night. You know, he likes to be in a tag match. He really has to respect you, and he really has to enjoy what he's doing to work with one-on-one programming. It's
Hmm.
just facts. So we had done the storyline was, Onyx beat me for the title. He slammed, I was in the cage at Prestonsburg, and Shane sneaks out, slams the door in my face, and Onyx comes out. So I get the microphone and I tell the crowd that I'm going to do something that Rick Rude and Brian Pillman never got to do. I'm going to get my hands on Shane Douglas finally, and I'm going to be the one that puts him under because Shane was working with Pillman. Pillman had the wreck; they didn't ever get to work. Rude was out doing the mask gimmick. You remember he was messing with the
Hmm.
franchise. They didn't get to work, so it had all accumulated up to where Shane cut this awesome promo about me,
Oh
Rude, and
yeah.
Pillman, and it never got to happen. And he was not happy about it because he knew
Mhm.
we had something. We'd worked hard on it, and it broke my heart as somebody that respected him so much that I didn't get to have that last match with him. At the same time, it was like humbling because this man that I looked up to and watched is calling me on the telephone, and he's mad that we ain't getting to do it. So it was cool in a way, and it was sad in a way, but it was a respect all the way.
So what happened there? Was there a reason why the company went on hiatus, or?
I have no clue. Honest to God, I have no clue. We were supposed to do this, the final match with me and Shane. The original plan was for Ricky Steamboat to be the special guest referee,
That'd
and
been
it's
amazing.
it was one of them too good to be true moments. But I don't know what nobody knows what happened. Honestly, all I heard was one of the basketball players from the school that was fundraising 2 days before it got a hold of me and told me that it was canceled, and nobody even reached out to me. So I don't really.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it really broke my heart, and it was
So
disappointing and heartbreaking at the same
you
time.
didn't get to hear anything from Tommy or Richie or anybody that said anything about that? What happened?
Never, nothing was ever told what happened to me.
Wow.
Nothing. But
Well,
I am returning this weekend with Wildfire. First show in a long time, actually. We're in Menifee County Friday night, and then we're at South Floyd Saturday night, I think. So that'll be the first time I've actually seen those guys in a long time. So
yeah, I think I might try to come out for that South Floyd
yeah,
show.
come on
If
over,
if
dude.
I if I've not got anything else going on, I'll let you know for sure. But
Definitely, definitely.
back to that question though. So you talked about the best thing about being a professional wrestler. What's the worst thing?
The worst thing is probably aging,
Mhm.
knowing that you're on top of your game, and at your age that it's about over with. You wish you could be 30 the way you are up here right now, or you wish you could be 25 and have the knowledge. So aging, because like I said, right now I'm the best I've ever been, but I also am a 41-year-old man. So uh, that's the worst part. I mean, obviously injuries and stuff because that sucks, but the mental part of knowing that you're probably going to have to give this up soon, and it's something you love, and you don't want to hang around too long. Like I don't want to be somebody that's you know
You don't
I
be
just
like You don't want to be like Gypsy Joe.
No, I don't need New Jack out there trying to kill him. 70 year olds.
Yeah.
No, I'll always want to be part of the business, but I know my work. I've got. I'm not. I'm not saying that it's very soon or nothing, but life is fast, dude. That's something I've
No,
learned in life.
you're not kidding, man. Like I know that for sure.
Life is fast, and you just got to cherish every moment you can, and be thankful for all the blessings. Because I've been blessed. I've had a lot of people in the wrestling business look out for me and put me in positions that
Mhm.
I would have never dreamed I would have been in. Honestly,
Well, Adam, I got one more question for you, man. And
what's that,
before
buddy?
before before I get into that, just again want to thank you so much for doing this with me. You just taking time, out of your schedule to for the show. So it means a lot to me, man.
I love
Um,
talking to you, son. I'd do it all night. We could do a 3 hour show. It don't matter to
hey,
me.
hey, one of these days we will. If you're game for it, I'm game for it,
I'm
brother.
game for it, dude. I can talk all night.
But if my last question for you is, if someone out there watching wanted to become a professional wrestler nowadays, what is the best advice that you would give them?
Okay, so the best advice that I would give you is to find a good trainer, an old school trainer, someone that had been around the business way back and can teach you so many simple things that mean so much. It ain't about the moves. It ain't, I mean, moves are important. But to learn how to work, learn how to sell, learn how to the psychology is something you just have to learn as you get older in the ring and everything. Being trained good and developing a character. I tell people that all the time that ask that advice, and they don't have a clue at the time. Um, I've been thinking about this or I've been thinking about that, and I'm like, nah, man, you better have something in your mind that you feel confident in,
Mhm.
something you don't have to pretend to be. I mean, everybody's got to do a little pretending, but the closer your character is to who you are as a person, the easier it is to go out there and make the audience believe in you. I mean, that's the best advice I can give you.
I think that's excellent advice, man, because it's like, you know, if you're creating a character for yourself that's as close to who you are that you can possibly get without, revealing everything about
Yes,
yourself, it's easier to remember and it's easier for you to come up with ideas for that character.
and
I
it
feel.
makes you unique. Like everybody's influenced by people. When I do a promo, you'll see my Pillman eyes and my crazy smile, or you'll see me turn and point, or facial features like Rick Rude. I add all these things in it without you knowing exactly where they're coming from. So it's a
Right.
mixture of all these different things, but it means something to me because it's certain things I picked from these guys that put me in a position to be able to do what I love to do.
Right, and I absolutely agree with all that, man. But Adam, I want to say thank you again. I appreciate you taking time to do the show. So, what can we expect to see coming up from the Human Horror movie?
Well, you've got this weekend Wildfire Championship Wrestling will be in Menifee County on Friday. Saturday will be over at South Floyd. Next month, me and Kobe Carmichael will be at Virgie at the desk with Kentucky Championship Wrestling. That's my two companies right now, pretty much. Like I said, I don't want too much on my plate. Kentucky Championship Wrestling gives me a chance to work with different guys, and me and Kobe, the tag team. Me and Kobe's your modern day X Pac and Hall. I mean, we're that type, and we get to talk to Nate. Nate's there.
Oh yeah.
Sean Cruz is a good worker. I love Berto. I don't know if you're familiar with Berto or not.
Mm-mm.
He brings the hippo out. He's a great guy. And we get to cross paths with Corey and Corey Sparks. Some guys we've worked with, and it's always every other week, or excuse me, every other week. It's every other month at the old Virgie Gym, and their production is off the hook, dude. It looks like the old WCW in the early '90s, and it's growing. And I like to be able to help a company that's trying. I like to help anybody that's trying to get something off their feet. I mean, I just like to give them a little push if I can help. And they're doing really well up there. And Wildfire seems to be moving along, so you'll see me there when they're around. So, yeah, you can always check my Facebook and my TikToks. I'm always promoting, and yeah, That's about all she wrote on that end.
And I'm glad you mentioned your social media, because I was going to say that everyone be sure to follow Adam on all his social media. I have all of his links down in the description of this video, so be sure to check out all his stuff after this video. Give him a follow. Check out everything that he's doing. But man, it has been a pleasure, and on behalf of both myself and Adam, I want to thank everyone for watching the show. And I've got several other fun shows coming up, including, I got this Sunday. I have an interview with just he doesn't have a YouTube channel. He's not a wrestler. He's just a fan, and that's what I'm doing this show for, because I want to talk with all the fans that I can here and get their perspective of how
Yes,
they
I
got
love
into
that.
wrestling.
That is awesome, dude. That's a see. That's what makes you unique too. Who else does that? I don't know nobody that does
I
that.
don't know, man, but I just thought it was a fantastic idea because, like
Very
I
good
said,
idea.
I'm someone that just loves to talk wrestling with anybody. They don't have to be a wrestler. They don't have to be popular or some celebrity or anything. They can be just the average Joe, and man, I will talk shit about wrestling with you for hours, dude, if I can. But everybody just stay tuned to the channel, and if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that effing bell, brother, here on the CraterMania channel. And we will see you next time on How I Got Into Wrestling.
He's American man.